on alternative sources to grant funding. Quickly on this, when we started back in, I think it was about November or December, we had one of our first launch event, and a conversation ensued online with the participants where we took on board one of the comments, which was, are there any other investment, any other funding opportunities other than grant aid? And so we took this back and we had a conversation internally. And today's webinar session is a reflection of the outcome of that conversation. So we do listen, contrary to some belief, and keep your ideas coming. And if we could fit them in, we'll certainly do. So this session arose out of a conversation we had online about alternative sources. So Gina and the team has put together this session today. The program itself, for those who've been coming on regularly, will recognize this. And the Ubele Initiative undertook a series of research in the early part of the pandemic. And we did a follow-up in the summer for those organizations. And out of that came a number of voices around certain things that organizations felt over the next coming months, 6 to 12 months at least, they would benefit from. And they were around capacity building, access into grant funding programs and opportunities, strategic business planning, and access to online platforms. The diagram you see there is taken from our last research where we spoke to a number of organizations, and that could be found on the Ubele website, and you could follow up in a bit more detail what people were saying to us. And so these series of webinars and this capacity building MEL England program is a direct relationship to what you've been telling us that you think you could benefit from over the COVID period and beyond. And so some of those upcoming webinars will include this. So last week we started off with governance and leadership, and Deborah Robinson, who's online, and myself led that one. This week, today, Gina is going to take you through alternative grant funding. And tomorrow, for those who are online or are interested and have assets, physical assets that you'd like to explore how you could facilitate and enable resources through that resource, Steve Conway is going to leave a conversation tomorrow on that. And so do quickly register for that if you haven't done so yet. And next week, we've got looking at setting up community businesses with Yvonne Witter and achieving stakeholder involvement with Ade Sawyer. The following week, we got William taking us through e-commerce for social enterprise. And here we're looking at how you might be able to turn your products, your goods, your services in terms of online digitalization. On the 18th and the 24th, the following weeks, we've got two sessions, one on group facilitation and the last one will be on introduction to complex challenges. We're going to look at systems thinking, and all these are around policy influencing. So this is a program, you'll get these slides and these will be on there. So do keep your eyes open for these upcoming sessions over the next coming week. Now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Gina and the team, and I'm going to slink into the background and keep my eyes on the chats. And so over to you, Gina.
Good afternoon, all. And I'm going to introduce you to Marianne from the Social Investment Business, who will be doing the first session, talking about social investment. Over to you, Marianne.
Thank you, Gina. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Just give me a minute. And let me know if can you see that? It's okay? Okay, perfect, great. Okay, so basically what I'm going to talk today a little bit, it's more about like social investment and what does it look like? What's the difference between grants and social investment? And also, what are we doing in social investment business? And what type of programs do we have? And what do you need to keep in mind every time that you are applying to this type of funding? So first, what is social investment? Social investment is the use of repayable finance to help an organization achieve a social purpose. This is a definition that is using Good Finance, a website that if you want to enter after this is super useful, and you can actually find different tools to actually understand more about social investment sector. And we have a similar definition from Social Enterprise UK, that social investment is repayable finance provided for charities and social enterprises. That means that it's not grant, but it's money that the investor first expects to get back, often with an interest rate, and second, expects to help create positive social impact. So I think that what we need to bear in mind here is that the difference, that is not a donation, it's not a grant, and in actually what the investor, what is going to look and to seek to get from this investment is like the interest, like a return. So that's the important part. And why would you need this type of funding? When it would be good for you or for your organization? When, for example, you want to start your organization, you have an idea, you want to pilot this, you need system to start like doing, you need to start setting up things, you need to do market development, business development, different things. That would be a good example where and why would you need social investment. Second, maintaining cash flow. We know that organizations, we need to have like reserve and cash to pay for daily operation. Basically, what we mean by this is, for example, imagine if you have like 30 customers and they are not paying you up to like 6 months, and you need to cover your expenses. So basically, social investment could be an opportunity to get that cash that you need for that 6 months to cover your expenses until you get your cash in the future. So that would be another option. Then for growth and innovation, imagine if you have like your social enterprise or charity and you want to expand, you want to grow, you want to win new contracts, you want to explore new products. That would be another example. Or if you want to buy an asset, if you want to acquire any type of asset, because this is going to make your organization more financially resilient or stable in the long term. Or if you want to actually explore a new revenue stream, renting out spaces from different assets. For example, if you buy like a different buildings, different things, you can rent out and have a new revenue stream. So that's the reason you can be interested in social investment. What type of social investment do we have? First, the borrowing. I think that we are really familiarized with this borrowing, that is a loan, basically. So the investor, what is going to expect here is to get a return of the investment with an interest rate, with interest. So for example, if I go and we ask for 10K, at the end of the period, we are going to be paying 11K, and we need to be able to pay £229 per month over 4 years. That's an example of like a loan or a borrowing. We have different types of borrowings or loans. We have secure and unsecured loans. Most of the high street banks, when you go and ask for this type of product, what they are going to say is like, okay, but we need to secure something. This is like a mortgage. So they give you the loan, but you need to have an asset so that it can be secure, that in case you don't repay them back, they can actually have that asset. So that means that the interest rate in that case is going to be lower. If you have a loan that is unsecured, then the risk is higher because you don't have that asset that is like against your loan. So that tends to have like a higher interest rate. And we also have like a different program, like a different type of deals in this section that is borrowing, that is called blended finance or blended deals. And that means that you can get like a product that is part loan and part grant. And this is what we do at social investment business. So basically, imagine instead of getting 10K, you can get 8K part of a loan and 2K as a grant. So that means that you are not going to be paying interest over the 10K. You're going to be paying only over the 8K. And the second type of social investment is shares. And this is basically when an investor comes and they buys a portion of your social enterprise or company. And they have like a voice then, a share, a piece of your organization. For example, an investor pays 10K for owning 10% of your organization. We also have like other type of social investment that I'm not going to go into more detail here because they are like just emerging. That is quasi-equity, that's repayable grants, and some very patient and loans, unsecured loans, or also crowdfunding. So now let me tell you a little bit more about us and what we do at SAVE. So basically what we want to do here is to provide finance and this type of social investment products to different communities. So finance for fairer communities. What do we want to, what's our vision? So impact-led organizations can get what they need to improve people's life. And how do we do this at SAVE? First, providing the finance product, so providing the money to these organizations and social enterprises, charities, working with different partners in the sector, funders, social intermediaries, and grassroots organizations to improve the way that we deliver the products, and also using the knowledge and all the data that we collect to inform and influence the sector. SAVE has been around since 2002. That's a long time. And we have run different type of programs, very small one and very large one to different years, multi-year programs. We have provided more than 450 millions in investment. That means grants, loans, and different instruments to over like 4,000 charities and social enterprises. We started in 2002 as a venture capital fund. Then we won the contract on behalf of the Home Office, Future Builders. That was one of the biggest social investment funds. It was more than 140 millions for different communities based in England. Then we got another contract in 2009, Community Builders, and that was also a blended finance deal. And from that portfolio management, we got our endowment that we are going to use in the next year. So basically, what do? We run different programs, as we say. We have like grants and support programs. We have the Rich Fund with Access, the Enterprise Development Program that is also with Access. I'm going to explain a little bit more about that later. We have blended finance, like I was mentioning. This is part loan, part grant. In 2018, we started doing the Forward Enterprise Fund, that it was a blended finance programs to help enterprises that were creating employment for ex-offenders in England. And now we're running the Resilience and Recovery Fund. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the next slide. And this fund is specifically to help like charities and social enterprises that are being affected by COVID. Also, we do have like a learning and influence team. So it's not only about delivering programs and getting the funds and just giving this to this organization. It's also about knowing and collecting data and how can we improve this in the future. So we do have like a director of influence and learning. We are trying to make that different impact, improving the impact approach. How are we making the decisions? We're trying to collect standardized data across all the funds to compare them. And we are collaborating with different actors in the sector to get more data about how social investment is actually improving the sector in the recent years. This is another way of looking like what we have done. We have deployed more than 180 millions in loan finance. alongside 133 millions of grants. This is only in blended finance programs. Alongside that, we have like grants program, as I was saying, and we have disbursed more than 145 millions on that side. We are working with different partners. We are working with Access and Power to Change. We are the strategic partner for them. And what does that mean is that we are delivering most of the grant program. We are also working with Big Society Capital. They are the funder of this Resilient and Recovery Fund. They gave us 25 million to start this blended finance program. And we have worked as well with the Home Office, Department of Health, and History England, and also the National Lottery Community Fund. This is an example of how a blended finance program looks like. So what are we doing now at SAVE? So we are running the Resilience and Recovery Loan Fund. What is this? We set up this program in 2020, April, after all this coronavirus and the first lockdown started. And what we were doing is we were using the British Business Bank accreditation that is called CBILS, Coronavirus Loan Interruption Loan Scheme, to make loans more affordable and accessible to the sector. So that means social enterprises and charities. So today we have deployed more than 20 millions. We have given more than 60 loans, part grants, part loans, to charities and social enterprises across the UK, not to a specific sector. This could be any type of sector. It could be mental health, people working with ex-offenders, people working with disabilities. It could be anything. What do you need to have? What's the eligibility for this fund, for example? You need to have a turnover of over 400K. You need to have a turnover that is less than 45 million, because then you have to be as a SME. This is a criteria that BBB set up. Then 50% of the income needs to be from a trading activity, but this only applies for social enterprises. If you're a charity, this criteria doesn't apply for you. And you need to be able to confirm that your organization has been affected by the COVID. The loans that we are giving are from 100K to up to 1.5 millions. And the term, so the length of the loan, can be from 1 year to 5 years. So this is how it looks like, the blended finance program. We have given 42 unsecured deals. So that means that there's, for example, a charity, a social enterprise, they don't have an asset. They actually can go and ask for a loan, in this case, to us. And they don't have to actually, it's not like a mortgage. They don't need to have an asset to actually get this loan. And the first year, because this is a government scheme, the first year you don't need to repay anything. And also the government is paying the interest rate the first year and the arrangement fee. Then we have another program that is a blended finance program that is called First Enterprise Fund. And this is for smaller organization. So basically this pilot fund is a pilot that we are running on behalf of FASTA, and is to support community businesses across England. So if you want to actually apply to this fund, for example, you need to be a community organization first, working in England. You need to be operating for more than a year, and you need to provide evidence. How are you actually making a social impact to your local community? So that means that you need to actually have in your decision-making process, like people from your local community there, and you need to be able to provide like a report of how you're actually making a social impact in your area. And what are the funding packages here? What's the product detail? So you can get a loan that is 30K. This is a blended finance program, so 90% can be loan and 10% grant. And the loan part has like a 5% interest rate fixed charge. you can get a loan that is up to 4 years with an optional capital holiday repayment for the first year. So that means that the first year, you don't have to repay anything back until the second one, you start repaying all your installment. So the importance of this, so we have like 2 different blended finance programs. The first one, the Resilience and Recovery Fund, is for social enterprises that they have been affected by COVID, but they are like, have a high turnover, more than 400. And this is a really small fund that is actually aiming to help community businesses across England when they have like a turnover that is around 50 to 100K. And the loans is like average 30K, but it could be a little bit more if we think that the organization actually needs more money for the different things that they are proposing. And just to finish about like grants, I know this is more about social investment, but I want to let you know that we also have grant programs. And this is a grant program that we are running with Access. And it's focused in 4 different sectors: homelessness, youth, equality, and mental health. And what we are doing here with the grants is we are trying to give a grant to different organizations so they can start looking for new models or new revenue streams to be more financially resilient. So if you apply to this, you are going to be able to join a cohort of different social enterprises or charities. They are in the same journey as you. The grants are approximately 30K. This is a really bespoke product. So it's not that we are just giving these funds for working capital or a specific thing. It depends on what you need to actually develop your new product. And currently, the only sector that is open for application is mental health. And I want to finish with this. So if you want to apply to any type of like funding, what are the considerations that you need to have before applying? So first, you need to be super clear the amount of money that you want to ask for. Like, why do you want this amount and why is it for? And your ability to repay this investment in the time. So for that, we go to the second point, revenue model. So you need to be super clear what your revenue model is. Like, what are your costs? What are your income streams? How do your business model look like? Are you going to be able to repay this back? If you take a loan of 30K in 4 years, how much do you have to pay each month? Like, what's the profit that you're making? Is that something that you can do or not? Like, all that things you need to take into consideration. Then you need to be super clear also about the business model. So how are you working? What's your track record? Like, how are you engaging with your customers? Like, what are the services that you're providing? What are the financial and business skills that your organization has? Why is like your product, your service like so unique, and why people are going to buy your product? So you need to know your customers really well. Who are they? Like, have a profile of them. Who are your competitors? Like, how your product they fit in the market. So know really well what your business model is looking like. And if you want to grow this business model, how are you going to do that? Fourth, social impact. This is something that every time that you want to look for social investment, everyone is going to ask for you, like, okay, what do you want to achieve and how? What are you doing to actually improve like the social impact that your organization is having? Like, how are you managing this? How are you reporting on this? How you're measuring? So that's really important to be super clear about what are you trying to do on the social impact area. And finally, legal structure. I think it's super important that we know that some legal structure are not going to be able, for example, to raise equity. If you're a private limited guarantee company by guarantee, you don't have shares. So in that sense, you are not going to be able to actually raise equity. In the case, for example, Access, when they give you grants or any type of blended deals, they ask us for social enterprises to have a clear social mission, to have an asset log, and to actually, if they are distributing profit, that they distribute less than 50% of the profits. So you need to be super clear as well of the legal structure that you have and what can you do with the legal structure and what type of investment can you raise considering the legal structure that you have. So I'm going to stop there. I know that's a lot of information and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Marianne. Does anyone have any questions for Marianne?
There are two questions, Marianne,
Yeah.
that came up, and both from Daisy. I hope I've captured it right, Daisy. The first question is, what are the loan interest rates compared to the banks?
Yes, I think that's a really interesting question. So basically, for example, in that ASDA product, the interest rate is 5%, and the Resilience and Recovery Fund that we are running now is 7%. If you go to a high street bank, you are going to find that some of them, they are going to advertise that they can give you around 6 and 7%. So the same type of like interest rate that we are giving, but most of them, be aware of this, they are asking for security. So if you don't have an asset, most of them, they are not even going to give you a loan. And I think that's the main difference between social investment and high street loans, like banks. You know, the most common loan is secure, because if you are insecure, the interest would be much higher. I think that would be more than 10% in a high street bank. But I'm not saying this is the only option. It might be that you can have like a mix of like social investment, grants, high street lenders, like, you know, so it could be a mix of it. I think that you need to be super aware that we are comparing like apples with apples, you know. So I think that we need to be super clear about it. If it's secure, insecure, interest rate, and the length of the loan, because most of the high street banks, they don't give you a commercial loan that is more than 3 years, I think.
Thank you for that. And the other question from Daisy, sorry, is can a company that received the first lockdown bounce back loan also apply for the additional loan?
To the civils one.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, the one that basically what you can do with this one is you can refinance the first one. So you can apply and then you can pay back the bounce loan. Yes, so you would be able to apply.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. I think those were the main. Yeah, I think it's the same question. Those are the main two questions. And Mark, Urban Fitness, would like to ask a question.
Hi, thanks, Carl. My question is, how risk averse are you?
At sea, do you mean? Well, that's something that, yeah, I think that that's something that we are discussing at the moment, because we do have grants and we have our endowment. So we are actually, that's a discussion that is happening on the board, like how much endowment should we put forward to actually make a program that is taking risk, you know, for social enterprises and charities that, for example, has been affected by COVID. I don't know, arts, cultural organizations, they are super risky at this point. And I think, just to let you know, something that I forgot, that this Resilience and Recovery Fund is ending this month. But now, because the new announcement, they are extending, they are changing some guarantees. So we are going to do a second phase of the Resilient Recovery Fund. We are going to actually broaden the purposes. So you're going to be able to refinance. If you took debt because of the COVID, you're going to be able to refinance that with the new product that we are launching in the next month. But yeah, that's a really interesting question. I will say that we are mainly risk, like we take risk, I would say, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know, because as social entrepreneurs, we live on the edge. And so therefore, you know, yeah, I would think as a social investor, you know, there's that element of risk to say, let's, you know what, we believe in the business plan, we believe in You know, if you would have said this 18 months ago, you would have been saying, yeah, go for it. Who knows what's around the corner in regards to risk? And so as a social investor, then yes, it's about, I want to hear that you would take additional risks in us as social entrepreneurs and as a business to say, actually, you know what, there is some risk to this, but hey, if it comes off, we're going to do some really good stuff here for communities, wherever their community is. And so thank you for that. That's really positive. Can I also ask, Carl, if you don't mind? Yep. Can I also ask, in regards to minimum levels of annual turnover, and how many years of that minimum level of turnover? So for new entrepreneurs who have seized on an idea today, yesterday, last month, are they able to access social investment funds because they won't have any accounts or track history?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So basically, for the first enterprise funds, we are only asking for 1 year of track record. So you only have to have like annual accounts for 1 year. For resilience and recovery fund, it's a little bit more. It's like 2 years. But if you're actually starting and you only have like 2 months, 3 months, this might not be necessarily the best type of investment. You might need equity instead of this, or like grants, you know, because loans and blended deals are mostly for social enterprises and charities that do have a track record at least 1 or 2 years.
Can I ask Dean Williams and then Abdi? Yeah, Dean Williams first, because I saw your hand up first, and then Abdi.
Thank you for that, Carl. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dean Williams, and I'm the SME champion for Southwark Council. I run all the entrepreneurship programs, so this is quite intriguing. Okay, so my question to you is, first, what is the conversion rate in regards to Black businesses applying for these grants and loans? I would love to know what that is. And then second is, do you provide any type of support to get businesses financial ready as well to be able to apply for these loans?
Yeah. Okay. On the first one, the conversion rate. So we started collecting that data for these new funds. So the Resilience and Recovery Fund and the approval. I have the dashboard, so I can send that to you. I can share that with everyone. It's like a public dashboard. The conversion rate is like really low. We are approving around like 5%, 6% of BAME organizations, BAME-led organizations, for example. And that's because most of the BAME organizations that are applying for, they are not eligible. Some of them, their turnover is too high. They don't get until like 400K. It's like most of them is around 100, 150, I think. So yeah, I can give you the number of conversion actually about the applicants that are eligible to the ones that we have approved, because I know that the applicants, the entire, considering all the ones that are not eligible as well, is like 4%. And on the financial like support, we don't provide any type of support when they are applying specifically. So what we do is they call us, like basically we have a conversation with them. We do an assessment. We ask them like what's the business plan that they do have. Like we ask for the different financial accounts, the management accounts, and that's it. So we don't go with these two funds more than that. It's not like a support plus like finance program. It would be like just like the loan part. With the enterprise program, we do have a more bespoke product. So we have a cohort and we do a co-design with them. So that's like more support, like intensive, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Abdi, and then I've got someone called Fiston. I don't know where you are on the screen, Fiston. So if you are one of the same, then it's you next, but Abdi next.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. My name is Abdi Kaifara, and I'm from Somali Community Parents Association. which is a charitable organization. My question is, we occupy a building which actually multi-purpose used, community occupied, and it is subcontracted for many different groups, but it's a private landlord. So I'm thinking, there is already income generating building. So I'm thinking, what how could, if we have to come together and we wanted to buy off this building from the landlord, so how could we access your support? What sort of support? I know the building is already existing, and each group is paying rent towards to the.
So
each body is paying his share of rent.
okay, but what type of?
So how can we? That's my first question. My second question is, who should we contact it if we want it, and for the grant side of the thing? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I can send the link for the grants. That's no problem. And you can see there the different windows for each program when they are open. So I can send this to Carol, Gina, and they can circulate it later. On the other question about like buying the property. So my question would be like, what type of organization do you have? Like, it's a charity. That's what you told me.
Yes, charitable organization, CIO, charitable incorporated organization. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, there's some social investors that they do provide finance specifically for buying assets. One of them is sustainable and social and sustainable capital. So I can send you that link and you can check like the different programs that they do have. We don't have like any specific program right now. So you can buy an asset like specifically. Maybe if you were hit by COVID and you're presenting a business plan, how you can grow and how you can pivot in the next week, in the next years by buying this asset, that would be something that we would consider. But there's some social investors that they actually invest in property. So I can send you that information if you want. Adi.
Yeah, I sent my email, so that will be really good.
Yeah, no problem.
Can I just add to that? The session tomorrow with Steve, you might be interested in coming on because Steve does a lot of work around CASA acquisition and the like. So if you haven't registered yet, there was a link earlier on, we'll send it again. And you could book up for that because tomorrow he's actually looking at physical assets. So you may want to think about joining that session as well, just to hear and pick up on the bits and to follow up on your question.
All right, thank you.
Okay. The next person I had on
the other bit, the grant bit, she didn't respond, I think.
I'm going to send the website to Gina and Carl so they can share with you.
We can let you have the link. And the next one, because of time, is Joseph, Fiston, who is a student, and then Joseph. Are you with us still, Fiston? I think I pronounced your name right. Please tell me if I've got it wrong.
Yeah, I was about to ask one question, but unfortunately, somebody already asked a similar question.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
so that's fine.
We'll just take Joseph and then we'll move on. So this will be the last question.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to ask you, given the abysmally low number of BAME that you said succeed with your application, what are you considering doing? What are you going to do, or what are you planning to do to help that situation improve?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there are two things that we can do. Basically, I think that we have to be super realistic that this product, it might not be the best product for BAME organization. So maybe we will try to collect all the data we can have, and in the future, like develop a product that is more suitable for BAME organizations. So that's one of the things. So collecting data and actually knowing what's the necessity out there and how that product is going to look like. But a second thing that we can do with the second phase of this Resilience and Recovery Fund is that we are actually trying to lower down the threshold for some of the areas or like communities that we think that they have hit the most by the COVID. So that something that we are discussing internally. Like actually, if we just like cut a little bit the threshold, so more BAME organization can go through the process. But I think that the most important thing would be to actually provide a really suitable product for the BAME community in the next months with the data that we have.
Yeah, thank you very much, because almost 500,000 turnover is a bit pretty high for most. Anyway, thank you very much.
Definitely. And I think that's something that I want to say, that we are working with Ubele to actually find out in some point, like what's the best product for the BAME community. Definitely.
I was just going to say that, just as I add to that as well, Marianne, is that some of the thing that we're trying to do is to work with bodies like SIB, amongst others. And a key part of that are these webinars and seminar sessions, to also try and help us to better understand what the needs are. So the one-to-one support sessions we're providing is one element, and depending on what the organizations bring to the table, we can only work with that. And so if there are organizations that's teetering or hovering just under the cusp of some of these things, then being part of the program, make sure that your associates that you're working with are aware of where your intention is, otherwise they can't help you. Coming out of this, we are open, and it is only a hope that we will get another opportunity to seek some additional funding going forward, where we could extend the lessons learned around the support. And this may well be one of those areas, because we are beginning to unearth quite a lot of these needs. Without further ado, thank you all for that.
You're muted, Edgar.
Carl, you're on mute.
Sorry, I went to mute myself. I'm mindful of the time. So Erman had one last question, and this will be the last question because Gina has to move on. Can this fund be used with central government funds that was just announced in the budget today, around in terms of for community assets? So the question, it might be too early because it's been announced. So I'm preempting your answer, but it sounds very early. But can this fund be used with central government funds announced in the budget today for community assets?
Yeah, just let me I can go back to you after I actually check what happened with that announcement. I think that I need to have a discussion first with Rob and Jen about how is that going to look like. But definitely I will get back on that. Don't worry.
Brilliant. Thanks for that. Okay, thank you again, Marianne. And over to you, Gina.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. I'm going to share my screen. Next slide. Okay. Can everyone see the screen? Can everyone see the screen? Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about today, because a lot of organizations, they tend to focus on grant funding and miss out individual donors and major donors. So I'm going to be covering that today, a bit about community fundraising and digital fundraising. So the question that I need to ask is, do you know your supporters? Are you currently engaged with your supporters? Do you know their characteristics, why they support your organization, their preferred way of giving, how much they have been given? And do you know who you can approach from your supporters for funding? If you're not already engaged with your supporters, what you can do is make a list of your potential supporters, find out what motivates them, You can even find out if they have any hesitations or reasons why they're not giving. And then you can make contact via a letter, email, phone call, or through personal networks. You can provide promotional literature about your organization. It's always good to prepare a shopping list with regards to what your organization needs, and information in respect of your appeal and how much money is needed. It's always good to have a good news story or a case study to include with any of the material that you send out to your supporters. And also, you can build up your supporter database. You can put in the chat if you're engaging with your supporters. On to major donors. You can identify your donors. There are some donors that can do much more for your organization. And for small organizations, your donors would be people that can make a contribution of £300 plus. And for the larger organizations, it would be larger charities. Your major donors would be people that can contribute a higher sum in the region of like £5,000. And what you should do is actually look at your current donations values. Like, for instance, if you keep track of your donors, you should see how many, what they're actually contributing. If you're not if some of you have patrons and ambassadors, you should utilize them, because they open the doors to networks in order that you can raise funds through major donors. You can set up a forum to meet your major donors. You can make an approach, a tailor-made letter. You can do a meet and greet event so that they can meet the chief executive. And yeah, there's various different ways, like when I was raising funds for Mary Seacole's statue, we used to do a lot of receptions and dinners and stuff like that. Obviously through COVID, you can't do dinners, but you can still engage with your donors online. And think about how your donors can support your organization, because they'll sometimes they can give time for specific activities, or they can support if you need assistance in developing your organization on things like project management. So think about how your donors can support. Also, there is gift aid, which you get 25p for every £1 that's donated to your organization, and that's done through a pledge form. And there's online resources which HMRC provide for gift aid, but you can also do it online through Just Giving or the Charitable Aid Foundation. So if you can put in the chat box if you're already engaging with any major donors, or if it's when you intend to like engage. So community fundraising is basically a participatory fundraising which is visible in the community. So for example, you've seen the Macmillan Coffee mornings and Movember. Usually it's done via in-house events organized by the charity, some type of events that is usually like sponsored walks, bike rides, runs and quizzes. There's also do-it-yourself fundraising, which is led by your supporters who can plan and run fundraising activities. Then you've got your big events like the London Marathon. What you find with the larger charities is that they tend to have a dedicated page for the do-it-yourself fundraising activities. Like for instance, the example that I've put in here, the Alzheimer's Society, this is one of their events, which is Jog On Dementia. So as soon as you access their site, it provides you with details of this particular activity and how you can get involved in actually in supporting that activity as well. The do-it-yourself supporters, they usually use social media to promote events that they're raising funds for. You most probably see events such as you donating your birthday gift, and that's usually done via a charity, and usually the charity gives you all the relevant branding information that you need to do it, but that's usually done by via social media, sorry. So if you've got supporters raising funds on your behalf, they would need to be briefed in accordance to the law. So it's always good to check with the Fundraisers Regulators Authority or the Institute of Fundraising as well, because there's various different laws in respect of raising funds, and also with lotteries and how you receive gifts and stuff like that, or undertake any collections. The charity should provide appropriate materials. So for instance, logos and statements and rights of permissions to undertake the fundraising activity, anything in relation to safety, risk assessments, data protection, safeguarding, and also insurances. So the larger charities, they have the resources to plan these type of events and monitor and evaluate the events. Smaller charities will need to set up a task group, finding people who can put the time in to do these activities. So digital fundraising, that's funds raised digitally via computer, laptop, mobile phone. Usually there's 3 ways to raise funds digitally, and that's online donations via the website or your fundraising page, or digital fundraising campaigns, or you can raise funds through sponsorship via a Just Giving page. When you're undertaking this method, what you should be looking at is what you need to achieve. Think about the targets, deadlines, and how your campaign or activity will be measured. Attract, how you will get people to discover you and your campaign and the website, social media, and newsletters. It's really quite good to, when you're doing this, to have a newsletter, and also to think about the call to action on your actual website as well. You should look at how you would convince a visitor to give a type of messaging. The message is the key with regards to getting people to donate. It's usually people like to donate to organisations where they can see a clear message where the organization, where the user has benefited from the actual charities activities. They like to see those type of stories, those success stories of the work that the charity is actually doing or the social enterprise is doing. And it's always good to have good images and videos as well. You have to think about the visitor's journey to your website. Like sometimes when you go on a website, it could be like maybe you have to do 4 or 5 clicks to actually access the donors page. So it's best to look at your website and test it out and see exactly how many clicks would somebody have to do in order to access certain information about your organization. And especially like, for instance, when you want people to donate to your organization, they would like easy steps and in order to access that information in order that they can donate. And also you should look at how to give visitors the reason to continue giving. Remember to say thank you, send them a letter, acknowledging their donations, keep your comms up to date. Also advise them on the impact of their donation. And also you need to consider how you would co-op or sell them in respect of, you know, how you could actually retain them as a donor and how they can recommend and share news about the organization that they've donated to as well. So again, I've mentioned the website because the website is the key for attracting potential donors. So what you need to ensure is that you have a donate page, a link to giving platform, and again, relevant calls to action with really good content. And if you haven't got Google Analytics assigned to your website, that's a key thing that you should do, because that helps to report on the traffic that your website receives. You can also get a programmer to set up goals for breakdowns on your campaigns that you're actually running. Google Analytics is really good because it'll tell you how many people are actually visiting particular pages of your website and gives you the stats on it as well as Facebook does the same as well, with regarding the stats in respect of how many people access your Facebook site and everything's linked as well. Newsletter, you should aim to do, if you haven't got a newsletter, you should aim to do a newsletter at least every 3 to 9 weeks. Make it punchy and useful to the audience. You can link it with your mailing list using MailChimp. You've got the website. You should have a website subscription form. Social media. Just Giving is linked with Facebook. So, you know, make sure you have very emotive images and stories that you can work on Facebook. Twitter can be used locally for interaction and promoting your campaign, and YouTube to host any video material. Remember to add your thumbnail and tags. And also your search lists, TikTok, Snapchat, you can use Pinterest as well. A lot of it's also good to check what the larger charities are doing, because you can get some initiatives on what they're doing there with their campaigns. You can also use local radio stations and media platforms with digital fundraising as well. It's another way of creating awareness about any of your campaigns or activities that you're actually doing. Ensure that your content is accessible for the mobile phone as well. That's quite important, because sometimes you could be designing material for your actual campaigns or activities that you tend to run, and it may not fit the screen of your mobile. So make sure that that is accessible. Also look at opportunities and test new ideas. I've also put a task in for you to do. I don't know if there's enough time, but you can think about it. If 2 minutes, like to think how to start to plan how you wish to use digital fundraising, your resources, and list the platform and channels your audience is currently using. So Carl, I'm not sure if there's 2 minutes or so that they can start thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, you've still got time. So we've got until 5 o'clock.
Okay, so if we give you 2 minutes to just think about digital fundraising and what you would use it for, and you can start making a list, that would be great. And what I've done here is this next slide is St. Mungo's charity, and Sunday they had a direct mail shot in the Times, and this is what's actually on their website. It's one of their digital campaigns, and as you can see, there's a call to action. It gives you information with regards to what the donations, like if you donate £25, how that can support the organisation. If you donate £50, what that would do in supporting running skills and literacy classes, and also £100, which could buy resources for recovery. Obviously, this organisation has the funds to do these type of campaigns, but you can think of doing a smaller version of the campaign, of this type of campaign, with these key calls to action. So the tips for digital fundraising is, for instance, now that we're still in COVID, like a lot of things have moved on to online. So now you need to do online events using Zoom. You could still do socially distanced events, but that would be most probably if you were doing a walk or a fun run or a cycling event. Use your local radio stations for promotions. Think about sponsorships as well, because it can link, like you can look at corporate organizations to actually sponsor as well. Like for instance, like you've got banks, they do match funding. So if you've got a specific campaign that you want to run, you can maybe approach the bank and see if they would match fund any any funds that you raise from actually doing a specific campaign. You should look at like competitions, third-party platforms in respect of retailing products. Like you've got some specific third-party platforms that are actually linked to non-profit organizations, and they actually support non-profit organizations in a way of earning a commission for any products that are sold on the actual site. If you're doing any outdoor events, you should think about the COVID-19 regulations, and also think around doing a risk assessment as well. Direct MEL, you can still, it's still a method which is used, direct MEL, and if you are using it, you should establish your actual supporter base and plan out your actual direct MEL activity as well. Personal getting tongue-tied here. Personal solicitation, that you can still, that is effective if you're holding meet or greet meetings. You could still, you know, that's basically around the arcs. So if you're hosting a meet or greet meeting, if it's going to be online, you'll have your information in respect of what you will be presenting in respect of your organization and your actual shopping list. And then you can move on to the actual arcs in respect of what you would like your donor to support you with. Organizations are still doing, even though there's COVID, we're still doing online visits. So online visits is an opportunity to talk about your organization's work, another way of selling your organization, and also showcasing the work that you do, and arcs, and doing the arcs with regards to what your organization needs with regards to funds. It's really important. I know, like with large charities, they have the resources to research, and it's really important that if you're looking, whatever fundraising method that you're actually looking to do, that you actually research it thoroughly, and look at what the other charities, the larger charities, are actually doing, because they've got the actual resources, and you can get tips. You can even utilize some of their fundraising initiatives and ideas. It's important to, if you're looking to do digital fundraising, it's important that you develop a plan, a digital plan, set out the goals and objectives of the actual campaign, what you need to do, also the target, the funds that you need to raise. You would need to look at the type of social media that you would like to use. Also look at your website, because you most probably, with regards to your website, you most probably would want a dedicated page for people to engage on your actual campaign. So look at your website, your design, things like the images that you would want to use as well. And also what you should do is you should also have a campaign activity calendar. So you map out for the year the type of activities that you want to do with regards to fundraising, and also the resources that you need to use as well. I know that's like with smaller organizations, you don't have the resources and you heavily rely on volunteers. So, but it's important, like if you are using volunteers, to actually include them in the process of the planning of any of the events that you plan to do as well. It's also important as well to actually monitor your fundraising campaign, because sometimes like you can set up a campaign which you feel is really, really good, but it may have a real poor turnout. The results may not be what you expected. So it's always good like to monitor your campaign, evaluate it as well. There's specific ratios which you can use in respect of audience and return as well. Consider data protection as well, and any consents, like for instance, if you're doing using photographs and stuff, you need to get consents if you're using particular pictures, so you get consent from your users. If you're not using any photographs from any photography stocks as well. And we're on to the Q&A. If there's any questions, I can show you what I've done is I've done a page of additional resources. So you've got the link to Social Business Investment, Charity Aid Foundation, Just Giving. There's also a site, Charity Digital, that provides a lot of good tips. Directory of Social Change has a range of, they run a range of events, and they've also got some really good fundraising books on leadership as well. Also, there's a website called charitywater.org.uk, and this site, I would advise you to have a look at it, because it's it was ranked as a good site with regards to how they run their campaigns and how they display their call to actions and stuff. So that's a really good site to actually look at. You've got Virgin Money Giving, the Chartered Institute of Fundraisers. If you want to look at, they run various different courses. You've got Black Fundraisers UK, various different groups within the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, and also they have some information around the regulations of fundraising itself. You've got Fundraising UK, the charity digital code. So I'll advise you to go and look at the charity digital code, and that's the code in reference to if you're doing digital fundraising with regards to how the various different, it has different outlines things in reference to GDPR, and that it's mainly like the governance around it, really. And then you've got Social Enterprise UK, which is for the organisations that are social enterprises, and then Fundraising Regulator, which will give you all the regulations around fundraising itself. So I can go back to questions. Oop, let me get on to. Oh, there.
When you find that, there you go, we found it. Just about to say, thanks, Gina. We've got a few, I'm going to start with